She stopped for just 12 seconds to help a freezing old man, and lost her job, her home, and nearly her future. But Naomi didn't know. He was a billionaire. The night sliced through her coat like knives. Naomi Brooks pushed her rusted bike against the wind, stomach growling, fingers stiff. One more delivery, just enough to pay for a place to sleep. Then her phone buzzed. "You're fired." The screen blurred as tears filled her eyes. At the next corner she saw him, an old man, trembling at a bus stop, scarf fallen, ignored like trash. Naomi hesitated. Logic screamed, "Keep moving." But something inside her cracked. "Sir, are you okay?" He looked at her like she was the first real person he'd seen in years. What Naomi did next cost her everything. Or so she thought, because the man she helped wasn't just cold, he was testing the world, and she was the first to pass. If you were Naomi that night, would you risk everything to help? Or ride away to save yourself? Stay till the end. The choice she made will change everything you believe about kindness. Naomi Brooks wasn't the kind of woman who gave up easily. 30 years old and already tired of starting over. By day, she cleaned hotel rooms that weren't hers. By night, she delivered takeout for people who never looked her in the eye. 2 jobs, 2 paychecks, still never enough. Most nights she told herself, "Keep moving, Naomi. 1 more week, 1 more mile." Her mother used to say that too, before the sickness took her. "When you see someone lost, baby, you stop. Don't let the world harden you." Those words stuck, like a prayer she didn't believe in anymore, but somehow they still guided her. The snow pressed down on the streetlights, turning everything pale and quiet. Naomi's legs burned. Her gloves were torn. Rent was due in the morning. She didn't have it. Still, she kept pedaling through the storm. When she passed the bus stop again, she caught a glimpse of that same old man shivering alone. Her heart clenched, but she looked away. "Not tonight," she whispered. "Please, not tonight." Yet something in her chest wouldn't let her forget his face, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the ache of being human again. Her bike groaned beneath her, every turn of the wheel echoing through the silent street. "1 more mile," she muttered. "1 more mile, and you're done." Her breath came in clouds. The world felt empty. Street signs blurred behind the falling snow. Her stomach growled louder than the wind. She hadn't eaten since morning. Just coffee and a promise to herself that tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow never came. The phone in her pocket buzzed again, another reminder of bills she couldn't pay. She ignored it. If she stopped, she'd freeze. If she kept going, maybe she'd forget. She thought about her mother again, about warm hands, laughter in a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and soap, about the way she'd say, "Kindness doesn't cost you, baby. It saves you." Naomi blinked back tears. Her chain slipped once, biting into her leg. She hissed in pain, then kept going. 1 more mile, she repeated, though she no longer knew where she was going. Somewhere behind her, the wind carried a faint sound. A voice, weak, calling for help. Naomi stopped. Her breath froze mid-air, and there he was, still at that same bus stop, still alone. The old man stood hunched beneath the flickering streetlight, his thin coat fluttering like paper. His lips moved, but no sound came out. A crumpled piece of paper trembled in his hand. Naomi stared from across the street, her fingers tightening on the handlebars. People passed by without a glance. One man pulled his scarf higher. A woman looked down at her phone. No one cared. Her gut twisted. "Keep moving," her mind ordered. "It's not your problem." But her heart ached anyway. He looked so lost. Not just the kind of loss that comes from missing a bus, but the kind that comes from being forgotten. Naomi glanced at her phone. 7:46. 10 minutes until curfew. 1 more delay, and she'd lose her week's pay. "Come on," she whispered. "Just go." But she couldn't. The guilt hit her sharp, right under the ribs. Her mother's words echoed again. "When you see someone lost, you stop." Naomi swallowed hard. The old man coughed, a thin wheeze that broke the silence. She turned her bike forward, ready to ride away, then stopped. The kind of decision that divides a life in two was already forming inside her. Naomi gritted her teeth and pushed the pedals. The tires cut through the snow. Each turn felt heavier, louder, like her bike was arguing with her heart. "Keep going," she said out loud. "You can't save everyone." But 2 blocks later, she slowed down, then stopped. The image of that old man wouldn't leave her. His shaking hands, his empty eyes. She cursed under her breath, spun the bike around, and rode back. When she reached him, he was still there, smaller now, like the cold was shrinking him. "Sir?" she called, trying to sound calm. "You okay?" He blinked at her, confused. "Bus 23, he whispered. "Willow End. I think I missed it." Naomi's throat tightened. His shoes were soaked through, his fingers blue. She looked down at her phone again. 7:49, too late. "All right," she sighed. "Let's figure this out." He looked startled. "You don't have to." "Maybe not," she said softly, "but someone should." Naomi didn't know why she turned back. Maybe because she was tired of people turning away, and as she wrapped her scarf around his neck, she whispered, "Hold on, sir. We're going home." Naomi steadied the old man onto the back of her bike. He moved slowly, like every joint had forgotten how to bend. The snow kept falling, thick and steady. She pushed forward, her breath white in the dark. "Cold night to be out here," she said. He nodded weakly. "The world feels colder these days." "Maybe," she whispered, "but not all of it." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The tires cut thin lines through the snow, 2 faint trails disappearing behind them. Naomi's fingers burned from the cold, but she didn't stop. Every block felt longer, every gust of wind heavier. The man's voice broke the silence again. "I can't seem to remember where home is." Naomi swallowed hard. "That's okay, sir. We'll find it." She had no idea where home was either, not really. Maybe that was why she couldn't leave him behind. The storm howled around them, but inside that tiny space of shared struggle, something warm flickered. Small, fragile, and human. The ride ended at the edge of a long iron gate, half buried in snow. The old man lifted a shaking hand. "Here," he said softly. "This looks familiar." Naomi peered through the bars. A massive house stood beyond, its windows dark, its driveway untouched. "Are you sure this is it?" she asked. He nodded, confused but certain in his bones. She helped him up the path, her legs trembling from exhaustion. When she reached the front steps, the door creaked open. A man in a black coat stood there, his face turning from irritation to shock. "Mr. Langston?" he whispered. His voice broke. "We thought you were gone." Naomi froze. The old man blinked, dazed. The man at the door, Martin, rushed forward, wrapping his coat around his employer. "How did you get here? Who brought you?" Naomi stepped back, suddenly unsure if she belonged there. "Just someone passing by," she murmured. For the first time that night, the old man smiled. "Then I was lucky to be seen." Martin guided Edward inside, calling for help. Warm light spilled from the doorway, brushing against Naomi's face. For a moment, she wanted to follow, just to feel heat again. But she stayed where she was. Martin turned to her. "Miss, please come in. You saved his life." Naomi shook her head. "He's safe now. That's what matters." She scribbled her phone number on a small delivery receipt and placed it in Martin's hand. "If he wakes up, tell him. It was no trouble." Then she backed away, her boots sinking into the snow. Her body was trembling, part from cold, part from something else. Fear, exhaustion, maybe the quiet knowing that her life had just changed, though she didn't know how. As she reached the gate, she heard Edward's faint voice from inside. "Thank you, young lady." Naomi smiled weakly. "You're welcome, sir." The gate closed behind her with a soft click, the kind of sound that ends a chapter before you even realize it's over. As the gate closed behind her, Naomi didn't know that kindness had already cost her more than she could afford. And yet, it was only the beginning. Naomi biked home through the last of the storm. Her hands were stiff, her hair soaked through. The city felt emptier than ever. When she reached her building, the front door wouldn't open. She tried her key again. Nothing. The lock was new. Her heart dropped. She knocked, then banged. The landlord's muffled voice came from inside. "You're late on rent, Naomi. I changed the locks." "My stuff's still in there," she shouted. A pause. Then, "Not anymore." Her throat closed. She turned and saw a small pile of boxes sitting in the snow. Her clothes, her blankets, her mother's old photo frame. The glass was cracked. Naomi knelt, picking it up with shaking hands. The cold stung her fingers, but she didn't feel it. No home, no job, no warmth. Just a night sky that didn't care who she was. She sat on the curb until her body went numb, whispering to no one, "You did the right thing. You did the right thing." But the wind offered no answer. Naomi pulled out her phone and called Derek, her manager. It rang too long before he picked up. "What do you want?" he said. "Please," she began, voice trembling. "I just need another chance. I had an emergency tonight. Someone needed help." "You're not paid to play hero, Naomi," he snapped. "You're paid to show up." "I know. Save it. You're done here." The line went dead. Naomi stared at the screen until the light faded. Her reflection looked foreign. Eyes red, lips blue. She laughed once, a dry, broken sound. Around her, the world kept moving. A siren in the distance. The hum of cars that had somewhere to be. She tucked the phone into her pocket, wiped her face, and whispered, "Guess you're really on your own now." The truth hurt worse than the cold. Still, somewhere beneath the pain, a flicker of defiance sparked. She'd lost everything, but she still had her choice. And maybe that was something worth holding on to. The streets were quiet except for the sound of her shoes crunching over snow. Naomi didn't know where she was walking, only that she couldn't stop. The city lights blurred through her tears, turning into smears of gold and gray. She whispered to herself, over and over, "You did the right thing." The words came out like a prayer she didn't quite believe. Every doorway she passed was already taken. Someone else huddled inside, claiming a corner from the cold. She smiled sadly. "Guess we all just trying to survive," she murmured. Her body trembled. The cold reached through her coat, deep into her bones. She wrapped her arms around herself and kept walking. At a red light, she caught her reflection in a window. Tired eyes, cracked lips, a woman trying to look brave. "Don't let the world harden you," she said under her breath, repeating her mother's voice. The wind answered with silence. Naomi turned down a dim side street, drawn by a small glow ahead. A sign flickered, "Evans Market, open 24 hours." Maybe it was luck. Maybe Mercy finally noticed her. Either way, she pushed open the door. Warm air brushed her face as she stepped inside. The store smelled of coffee and old wood. A woman behind the counter looked up, her gray hair tied in a bun. "Cold night, huh?" the woman said. Naomi nodded, voice hoarse. "Just needed to get out of the wind." "Take your time, honey." Naomi moved through the aisles, rubbing her hands. The lights buzzed softly. For a moment, she felt safe. Then she heard a familiar voice. "What's she doing here?" Derek. He worked here too? Her stomach turned. He walked toward her, arms crossed. "Didn't expect to see you again. You following me now?" Naomi froze. "I just needed a place to warm up," he sneered. "Sure. Or maybe you're here to steal something, like always." "Excuse me?" she whispered. Before she could speak again, he called out, "Mrs. Evans, you might want to check the cameras. Pretty sure our guest here's up to something." The older woman frowned, glancing between them. "Derek, calm down." Naomi's throat tightened. "Please, I didn't take anything." But the damage was already done. The warmth in the store had turned to ice. Derek's voice rose, loud enough for the empty aisles to echo. "She's a thief. Check the register, you'll see." Naomi shook her head. "That's not true." Mrs. Evans hesitated, torn. "Let's just look at the footage, okay?" They crowded behind the counter. Derek pointed to the screen, jabbing his finger. "Right there, see? She's near the till." The video was fuzzy. The sound crackled. Naomi's figure moved in and out of frame, her shadow blurring with Derek's. The camera froze, glitched, then went black. "Great," Derek muttered. "How convenient." Naomi felt her stomach drop. "I didn't take anything. You know me, Derek. I worked hard." He cut her off. "You're good at playing the victim, huh?" Mrs. Evans sighed. "Derek, that's enough." But Naomi could see doubt in her eyes, her face flushed hot with shame. "I'll go," she whispered. "You don't have to believe me." She turned toward the door, heart pounding, when Mrs. Evans said quietly, "Wait." There was another camera in the corner, one Derek didn't notice, and Mrs. Evans suddenly looked like she remembered something important. Mrs. Evans pulled out her phone, connecting to the second camera feed. The video loaded slowly, the screen flickering to life. Derek crossed his arms. "This is ridiculous." "Quiet," Mrs. Evans said. The footage showed the store's back counter. Naomi stood there, looking tired, rubbing her hands for warmth. A few minutes later, Derek appeared behind her, opening the register when he thought no one was watching. The silence in the room grew heavy. Naomi's breath caught. "I told you." Mrs. Evans turned to Derek. "Care to explain this?" His face went pale. That's not—" "Enough," she said sharply. "Get out. You're finished here." Derek glared at Naomi one last time before storming out, the door slamming behind him. For a moment, no one spoke. Naomi stood still, tears welling in her eyes. Mrs. Evans softened. "You shouldn't have gone through that, honey." Naomi swallowed, her voice barely there. "Thank you for believing me." Mrs. Evans nodded. "Sometimes the truth just needs a little light." Outside, the snow had stopped falling. Mrs. Evans poured her a cup of hot tea. Naomi cupped it in both hands, feeling the heat seep back into her skin. "You look exhausted," Mrs. Evans said. "You got a place to stay tonight?" Naomi hesitated. "Not anymore," the woman sighed. "Then you'll stay here. Couch in the back's clean enough." "I don't want to be a bother." "Honey," Mrs. Evans interrupted gently, "you deserve a warm place. Sit. Rest. World's been cruel enough tonight." Naomi blinked fast, fighting tears. "Thank you," she whispered. For the first time in days, she didn't feel invisible. Mrs. Evans smiled. "You remind me of my daughter, always helping everyone but herself." Naomi laughed softly, the sound fragile. "Guess I'm not great at learning." "Maybe," Mrs. Evans said, "but hearts like yours keep the world from freezing over." Naomi leaned back, eyes closing, warmth finally spreading through her bones. Outside, the wind eased. The night was still cold, but for a moment, it didn't feel merciless anymore. Morning broke slow and pale, brushing the world clean after a long, cruel night. The morning light crept through the store windows. Naomi was sweeping near the counter when the sound of an engine broke the quiet. A sleek, black car pulled up outside, too clean, too polished for this part of town. Mrs. Evans peeked over the register. "You expecting company?" Naomi shook her head. "No one even knows I'm here." The car door opened. A tall man in a dark coat stepped out, crisp and calm. He scanned the storefront before walking in. "Good morning," he said politely. His voice was smooth, professional. "I'm looking for Naomi Brooks." Naomi froze, her broom still in hand. "That's me." He nodded once. "My name is Martin. I work for Mr. Edward Langston. He asked me to find you." Mrs. Evans frowned. "Langston? The billionaire?" Martin's expression didn't change. "Mr. Langston remembers last night. He wanted to thank Miss Brooks in person." Naomi's heart skipped. "He's awake?" "Very much so," Martin said. "He insists on seeing you. If you're willing, the car is waiting." Naomi looked to Mrs. Evans, who gave a small smile. "Go, honey. You earned this ride." And for the first time in a long time, Naomi felt fear and hope mixed together. The ride was silent except for the hum of the tires over snow. Naomi stared out the window, the world blurring by. She didn't speak until the car stopped in front of the same iron gate. When she stepped out, Edward Langston was already waiting. He stood on the porch, cane in hand, looking stronger than before. "There you are," he said warmly. "I wasn't sure I'd see you again." Naomi hesitated. You look better." He smiled. "Thanks to you. You saved me when no one would." She shook her head. "I just did what anyone should have done." Edward chuckled softly. "If that were true, I wouldn't have been standing there so long." Naomi felt her throat tighten. "I'm just glad you're home, sir." He nodded, studying her face. "And I'm glad you stopped that night. You gave me something I hadn't felt in years, hope." For a moment, neither spoke. The snow melted quietly off the porch rails, and the air between them felt lighter somehow. Then Edward said gently, "Come in, Naomi, please. Let me thank you properly." And though her feet felt heavy, she followed him inside. The warmth inside the Langston estate made Naomi's chest ache. The fire glowed softly, casting gold light across the room. Edward gestured for her to sit. "I heard what happened after you helped me," he said quietly. "Your job, your home." Naomi looked down. "It's fine. I'll figure something out." "You shouldn't have to figure it out alone," he said firmly. "You gave when you had nothing. Now, let me give something back." She shook her head. "I don't want charity." He smiled. "It's not charity, Naomi. It's gratitude. Stay here for a while. There's space, food, warmth. No strings attached." Her eyes stung. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Edward said softly. "I know you have a heart most people forget how to use." Naomi bit her lip, torn between pride and exhaustion. The fire crackled behind them. Finally, she nodded once. "All right, just until I get back on my feet." "Good," he said. "Then we'll both rest easier tonight." For the first time in months, Naomi exhaled without shaking. Naomi woke to sunlight instead of alarms. For a few seconds, she didn't remember where she was. The soft sheets, the quiet room, the smell of coffee from downstairs. Then it hit her. She was safe. She dressed quickly and found Martin in the kitchen, polishing silver. He smiled. "Mr. Langston's in the garden. He's expecting you." Outside, Edward sat near the greenhouse, wrapped in a blanket, watching the frost melt from the lemon trees. "Morning," Naomi said shyly. He smiled. "You sleep all right?" "Better than I have in a long time." He handed her a stack of papers. "These are some things I've been meaning to sort. Would you help me organize them?" "Of course," she said. As she worked, she caught herself humming. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm. For the first time since losing everything, Naomi didn't feel like a burden. She felt useful. When Edward looked up from his chair, he saw it too, the quiet return of light in her eyes. Over lunch, Edward watched Naomi flip through the last folder. "You're good at this," he said. She smiled faintly. "Guess all those delivery routes taught me to keep things in order." He leaned forward. "Naomi, I've been thinking about something. That night changed both of us. I'd like to make sure it means something." She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "A foundation," he said, "to help people who've lost their footing. The Langston Light Foundation." Her eyes widened. "That's big." He nodded. "And I want you to help me build it. You know what struggle feels like. You know compassion. That's rarer than money." Naomi shook her head, overwhelmed. "I don't know anything about running a foundation." "You'll learn," he said gently. "I'll teach you. All I need is your heart in it." She looked at him for a long time. "Then you've already got it." Edward smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. Outside, the snow began to melt, slowly, quietly, like a promise kept. Weeks passed. The idea turned into plans, and plans became action. Then, one morning, the world discovered their story. It started with a small headline in a local paper: "Homeless Woman Saves Billionaire's Life." Within days, the story spread everywhere. News anchors called Naomi the Angel of Maple Grove. Online, people shared her photo: a dark coat, snow in her hair, eyes full of quiet strength. Half the world called her a hero. The other half called her a liar. "She's smart," one comment read. "Bet she knew who he was." Another said, "Wish more people had her heart." Naomi scrolled until the words blurred. She shut the laptop, her pulse racing. Edward found her by the window. "You don't like attention, do you?" She shook her head. "They don't know me." "They know what matters," he said gently. "You saw someone lost, and you stopped." Still, Naomi couldn't shake the unease. Fame felt like a spotlight she never asked for. Warm at first, then burning. For every person who praised her, another whispered suspicion. "Let them talk," Edward said. "Truth doesn't need to shout." But, deep down, Naomi knew storms don't start with truth. They start with envy, and somewhere out there, envy was already watching. Derek saw her face on his phone while sitting in his car, engine idling. Naomi Brooks, smiling beside Edward Langston. He clenched his jaw. Unbelievable. A headline glared back at him. Billionaire and the woman who changed his life. He opened the camera app and hit record, his face half lit by the dashboard glow. "You've all seen that sweet story," he sneered. "Let me tell you the truth. She's not who you think she is. I worked with her. She lies. She manipulates. She knows how to play people, especially rich ones." He uploaded the video. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Naomi's name trended again, but not for kindness this time. Comments filled with venom. "Told you it was fake." "Gold digger." Naomi saw it all unfold in real time. Her chest tightened. Her hands shook. Edward came to her side, calm but firm. "He's angry because you survived what he didn't," he said. Naomi looked at him, eyes wet. "But people believe him." Edward's voice softened. "They always do, before they remember who's telling the story." By the next morning, news vans lined the street outside the Langston estate. Cameras flashed through the gates. Naomi stayed inside, pacing the living room. "I should leave," she said. "I'm ruining your name." Edward shook his head. "You're not running. The truth takes time, Naomi." She laughed bitterly. "You really think truth stands a chance against the internet?" He smiled faintly. "It always has. You just can't see it yet." Her phone buzzed again. Hundreds of messages, most cruel, a few kind. She silenced it. "They think I used you." "You didn't," he said simply. Naomi looked at him, tears in her eyes. "That doesn't matter if nobody believes it." Edward reached out, placing his hand over hers. "Listen to me. You don't prove truth with noise. You prove it by outlasting lies." His words landed deep. For the first time that day, Naomi breathed a little steadier. Outside, the storm of voices grew louder. But inside, Edward's calm was like an anchor. Steady, patient, and sure. 2 days later, Mrs. Evans uploaded a video from her store. Her voice trembled but strong. "This is for anyone calling Naomi Brooks a liar," she said. "I saw what kind of woman she is, and I still got the tape that proves it." The footage played, grainy but clear. Derek at the register, his hand slipping into the drawer. Naomi in the background, nowhere near it. The internet exploded. "Wait, this is the same guy accusing her?" One comment read. "Guess karma doesn't miss." Naomi's phone lit up with messages, but this time they weren't attacks. They were apologies. Edward handed her the screen. "Told you," he said softly. "Truth takes time." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "She didn't have to defend me." "She didn't do it for you," Edward said. "She did it because it was right." The next morning, the news ran a new headline. From accused to admired, the real Naomi Brooks. And, for the first time in weeks, Naomi smiled without fear. Months passed. The Langston Light Foundation opened its doors downtown, a small building with wide windows and hope inside every room. Naomi stood by the front desk, greeting people, helping students fill out forms, handing out warm meals. She had a title now, executive director, but she still cleaned tables when no one was looking. Reporters came again, this time to praise her. She answered humbly, never forgetting how it felt to be unseen. Edward watched from the corner, pride soft in his eyes. "You've done well, Naomi." She smiled. "We've done well." He nodded. "No. You turned ruin into reason." At night, Naomi walked through the quiet office, touching the walls, the desks, the photographs of families they'd helped. She whispered, "We made it." The lights reflected on the glass, and in that reflection she didn't see the woman who'd lost everything. She saw the woman who built something from it. And finally, she believed what Edward had told her all along. Truth doesn't shout, it endures. The months that followed were calm, the kind of peace Naomi hadn't known in years. She and Edward settled into a quiet rhythm, morning tea, long talks in the garden, evenings by the fire. He called her the daughter I never had. The first time he said it, Naomi froze, not knowing how to answer. Then she smiled softly and said, "And you're the father I didn't get to keep." They both laughed, though tears flickered in their eyes. Some days they worked side by side at the foundation. Other days they simply sat in silence, watching the world move outside the window. Edward's health slowed him, but his spirit never dimmed. "You've made this place shine brighter than I ever could," he told her one afternoon. Naomi shook her head. "You gave me the light to begin with." He chuckled. "You just refused to let it die." The snow came again that winter, softer this time, and as it fell, Naomi realized peace wasn't silence. It was being seen, finally, for who you are. Edward's cough grew worse with each passing week. Still, he insisted on sitting in the greenhouse every morning, his favorite blanket draped over his knees. Naomi joined him, pretending not to notice how tired he looked. "You should rest more," she said gently. He smiled faintly. "I'm resting enough. I just like watching the light change." They sat in silence, the lemon trees glowing faintly under the sun. Then his voice came, quiet but firm. "Naomi, promise me something." She turned toward him. "Anything. Promise me you'll keep the light on." Her throat tightened. "Don't talk like that." He squeezed her hand, his fingers cold. "One day, I won't be here to remind you why we started this, but you'll know. You always do." Tears filled her eyes. "I can't do this without you." "You already are," he whispered. And as the sunlight broke through the glass, she gave the promise she'd carry for the rest of her life. "I'll keep the light on." The house grew quieter with each sunrise. Naomi still brewed 2 cups of tea every morning, one for herself, one for the chair that stayed empty. 2 weeks later, Edward passed away in his sleep. There were no goodbyes, no last words, just stillness and peace. Naomi found him that morning, a faint smile on his face, his hand resting over his heart. For a long time, she couldn't move. The world felt too quiet. At the funeral, the small chapel was filled with people whose lives he had touched. She spoke softly when it was her turn. "He taught me that kindness isn't a favor. It's a way of seeing people. He saw me when no one else did." After the service, Martin handed her an envelope. "He left this for you." Inside was a single letter in Edward's handwriting. "My dear Naomi, if you're reading this, I've gone home. Don't mourn too long. You gave me peace I didn't know I needed. Real wealth isn't what we keep, it's what we share. Keep sharing the light. It's yours now. With love, Edward." Naomi pressed the letter to her chest, whispering, "You'll never be gone." Years passed. The Langston Light Foundation grew far beyond its first small office. 3 centers now stretched across the state, each one alive with laughter, purpose, and second chances. Naomi worked tirelessly. She trained new volunteers, spoke at schools, and built programs for people who had nothing left but hope. Everywhere she went, she carried Edward's words with her. Real wealth isn't what we keep. When people asked about her success, she smiled and said, "It's not mine alone. Someone shared their light with me. I'm just passing it on." Newspapers called her a symbol of hope, but she didn't care for titles. What mattered were the faces. Young people studying again, mothers finding work, strangers feeling seen. Each night, before locking the doors, she'd whisper, "Still shining, Edward." And she could almost hear his voice, soft and proud, answering, "Always." Snow fell in slow, quiet spirals, covering the streets the same way it had that first night. The Langston Light Foundation glowed softly against the winter dark, a beacon for anyone still searching. Naomi stood in front of the building, thinking of the woman she once was, the one who had nothing but a choice. That choice had become her legacy. It all began with a cold night, a bus stop, and a choice, she thought, because kindness always finds its way home. The wind carried a hush through the street. Behind those doors were people rebuilding their lives, strangers who now had warmth, food, and a reason to hope. Edward's promise lived on through them, through her. The lights inside shone brighter, spilling into the snow, reminding anyone who passed by that small acts still mattered. And somewhere beyond that moment, the story waited to reach someone else, to spark another act of courage, another quiet kindness. If this story touched your heart, let its light keep spreading. Follow, subscribe, and share it forward, because the world always needs more warmth, more hope, and more people who choose to stop. Keep the light on, always.